Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Catching Up. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil, alongside Patrick Clark tonight. On today's episode, we're catching up with Brute Strength in-person coach who's created a dominating training camp in Naples, Florida, Matt Torres. Hey Matt, how's it going?
It's going wonderful. Weather's beautiful down here. Training's going amazing.
I know you get beautiful weather, you get to train outside, inside, and right now your athletes are absolutely dominating the leaderboard. What has it been like kicking off the season so strong with your athletes?
It's everything that I hoped that it was going to be from day one when I came up with this idea. It's last year what I was what I was really trying to do is get everyone, as many as my athletes down here as possible. A couple of them weren't able to make it. A few of them decided to go to a different camp. And it's unique going from the remote coaching side into the in-person coaching side. And we all did it in some form or fashion, or we're inside of a CrossFit gym in one way, so we kind of understand what that in-person coaching is like. And it is really has become something super special really early, and so these athletes are responding to it very, very well.
Has there been an
Mhm, what
athlete that? Sorry about that, Lauren. Has there been an athlete that
That's okay.
who's maybe struggled at the beginning? Adjusting.
Not really. I think what's really good about this is we have a good crew of people, and they all have much different personalities. Uh, but it's kind of like a magical recipe in its own way. There's between Phil and Dallin and James and Emma and even Ethan as well. Um, you know, there's at first I think this is all of their first times moving away from home, and they're all pretty young. Um, so I just thought that potentially, like any sort of growing pains, that it'd be difficult for them to come down here and move across the country. But so far, everything's been going so well. I'm really lucky to have this group of athletes down here that they do an excellent job communicating with me, and it makes the transition fairly easy.
What is it like to balance that, coach and almost like older sibling, even father figure for some of these athletes because they are so young and it's almost like moving away like to college, but a training camp.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because on like the father figure, like older brother side of things, a lot of these athletes, they're slowly becoming like their own person, right? You learn a lot when you get away from your family, when you're on your own and you have to pay the bills on your own, figure things out on your own, wash your clothes, figure whatever it may be. And so a conversation I have with these guys is like, look, who you were from the day you got here now, it's going to continue to transform and transcend, and you're going to find your own voice, you're going to find your new personality. And all these guys are trying to do it right now. It's part of their responsibility through their sponsorships is to be finding their audience, essentially, like who's going to be their group of followers. And it strongly depends upon what their personality is like. I have this conversation much more often than I really thought I would. But, Emma, 17 years old, just turned 17. She has a group of followers that, the teenagers and the mothers and like, the fathers that love everything she does. Every word that comes out of her mouth is so well crafted and so well thought out that I'm like, Emma, this could potentially change. And you're starting to see these changes happen, and it gets super, super exciting. But to answer your question, it's a very natural balance to go from coach into father figure or big brother.
After week 2, the leaderboard, it had 4 of your athletes sitting in the top 10, and even if you looked at any training camp, it's pretty impressive to have 40% of athletes from one training camp, sitting that far up. What was it like to see your athletes take such a strong lead at the beginning, of the season?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, number one, I'm super excited about that. You see Phil and you see
Mhm.
Matt Pullen, which is actually Coach L's athlete, and then Dallin and James. it's a tricky place to to have that conversation, because you want to be very proud for them, but you also have to be able to say like, hey, this is just 2 weeks in, we have 3 weeks. And on top of that, with the open, it's like, I'm proud of them because they've done this in like a one and done fashion, but also at the same time, the bigger picture is still at play, right? Right now we're 2 weeks away from quarterfinals. We're focused on quarterfinals. We have our quarterfinals camp going on, and then the real big picture is top 5 at the semifinals here in North America. But without, I guess, like celebrating too much or too soon, and just like any other in-person competition, we see it all the time. Someone that's in first place on day 1 in a competition, things change on day 2, day 3. It's like, things are completely different, but it is very important to celebrate with these athletes, but also keep them realistic that, hey, this is just week 1, this is just week 2. Let's keep moving forward. Be happy that we did it, but let's move on to the next week.
How hard is that to do with such a young group, especially someone like, Emma is. Emma looks at challenge as a competition, but how's it kind of like, especially someone like Emma, and Dallin, or even Phil, kind of get them to kind of realize that this isn't we have long-term goals. These are just minor steps as we move on in the season.
You'd be surprised, but since these athletes have been doing this for so long, it's more surprising out of Phil because he's the newest to the sport. But they've been doing this for quite some time, and it's something they've naturally have grown into. These are conversations that we've had with James and Dallin when they're 16 and 15 years old, that I've had with Emma when she was 15 years old. From the first competition that we've been to, and for Dallin and James was the CrossFit Games, for Emma it was Wadapalooza back when she was still like competing in the teenage division. It's something that we constantly drill in, so there's no surprises. And my big thought here is, if I can give them as much information and as much like, we're about to do this and this could potentially happen, so let's not be surprised when it does, the better. Right now, even with that being said, these teams, they learn on their own time, right? I can give them exactly what's about to happen, and they're going to learn in their own way, which I'm totally okay with. We all do it. We still kind of do it to this day. So I don't. And when it does happen, it doesn't happen my way, but it happens their way. It's just like, hey, it's all right. This is all part of the learning, and you're still young. And it's going to take a lot more time, and you're going to be hitting a lot more adversity than what you really think. So, I'm not too surprised by it, that they have the ability to kind of see that foresight and think ahead.
When it comes to thinking ahead and like seeing how much hype is around these young athletes in your training camp right now, there's a lot of pressure that I can imagine is built up around the athletes. And when you look at, outside of Emma Cary, there isn't really a lot of games experience and really no games experience in the individual or elite category. So how do you manage the pressure with keeping the eye on the prize of the end goal is getting to the games as elite individuals?
For the most part, it starts on day 1 of like preseason, right? So whenever people finish. So an example of that is for James, Dallin, and Phil. It started like 3 weeks after semifinals and last chance qualifier. For Emma, that 3-week period started right after the CrossFit Games. And so the training from that point moving forward is specific for semifinal work, right? So now, with that being said, that's like a very broad picture. Within there, everyone has different areas that they must get better at in order to get closer to that top 5 in semifinals. So the thought is already there. So when we go from, one qualifier into one competition into the next thing, everything that we do is specifically done to gather more data points for semifinals. So an example is when we went into Wadapalooza, or when Emma went into Rogue, or when Emma went to Dubai, it's like, look, it's just icing on the cake if you do very, very well. we're here for one purpose, and the one purpose is to get as many data points so we can get as much specific training done going into semifinals. And so that thought is kind of already with them right there. So that the entirety of the year, it's like, okay, we're doing the Open, one and done. We're doing quarterfinals, hopefully one and done. We're choosing our semifinals, and it's like, now we're here, right? And that's where things will truly start to pay off. So, there's implements and there's movements and there's weights that we see at semifinals that we will probably never see inside of an open workout, but we may see inside of a quarterfinal workout. So the quarterfinals is like our last little section where we'll be able to get some more data points before we go into semifinals. But it's something that we talk about from day one for all of them, and it's that's the main goal for all these athletes.
Roman
Do you think,
Khrennikov, he made his way to the US. He was in Naples, Florida. He trained with you guys for 22.3. What was that like when you look at like the relationship between like your athletes who have been there and like Roman jumping in? He's been training with you guys for I think 5 years now, finally in person. What was all of that like?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's the communication there is not the easiest. A lot of it is with his interpreter, but Roman has had a ton of success working through Brute, and we wanted to find an atmosphere where he can continue his success. And it was right off the plane. I had plans to get him to do the Open like the next day, just to let him like relax and just uh, feel his way around per se. But to have him down here, I mean, the athletes, they love competition, right? They love seeing where one of their teammates are in the grand scheme of everything, right? We're this close to quarterfinals. Whether they say it or not, they're always they're friendly, sizing each other up, right? It's very difficult to have this many stellar athletes in one spot and not be like, okay, well, what are you good at? What are you going to get on this time? But at the same time, I told them, I texted them all, I said, hey guys, Roman's coming in for our session 2. He's going to be doing the Open. Come on by, cheer him on. And now you're stepping into an atmosphere where it's like a few teenagers. Phil's even young. He just turned 24. Dallin's 20. It's like, they're about as friendly as anyone can ever be. If there's an atmosphere where you can step into and you feel like it's just an extended family, like this is it right here. We're not talking about like, people that have been in the game for 8-9 years are not, they're not arrogant by any stretch of the means. So, it's nice to have him training, and then, he did very well on the Open as well. And the next day of training, it was just like, about as smooth as it could possibly be. So, we're excited for him, and we're happy that he's in the States, and, we know that he's going to do very, very well.
Dallin and James got the same exact score on 22.1. How the heck did that happen? Were they going next to each other during that workout, or what was that like?
No, actually, so James went heat 1, Dallin went heat 2. What's funny is, so every Friday we'll run like a friendly competition. It's just one workout. And the Friday before that, they actually tied in the same workout again. So, those two are best of friends. So, whenever they can get a little competition in there and tie, right? For them, like tying is like the most magical moment ever. No one.
What are the
We
odds of
always
that?
want, right? We always want to beat our friend, but we never want to be like, the one to lose to our friend. We never want to be the one beating our friend and make them feel bad. We always want them to be proud about it. So to have them tie, it's like it's the perfect outcome, at least in this scenario right here.
Yeah, that was definitely cool to watch.
So going into quarterfinals, obviously you have your group down there. Is there any plans for Saghafi and Spencer to come down and maybe get that group all collectively doing the quarterfinal workouts together?
For sure. So Fee actually came down today. You know, she's going to link up with us tomorrow for her first training session with us. The last time Fee was down was right before Wadapalooza, and there was a ton of great improvement. So I'm super, super excited for Fee. Fee is a stellar athlete. Fee is someone she's just a machine. It's like, you know, when I think of Fee, I think of like the female version of a Rich Froning, just very consistent across the board. She can hold like 80 to 85% of her, you know, her fitness capacity for a very long period of time. You know, we have a lot of great things going with Fee, and whenever she's here in town, we see a ton of great progress. So I'm super excited. Now, when I heard about Spencer, I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, bud, you know, whenever you want to come down, you got a place to stay. Come on over. You know, come train with these guys." You know, I linked up with him a while back ago, earlier, I think this summer, and you know, he's a good dude. He's got a ton of upside, and not to mention, you know, both him and Fee were training with one of the best to ever do it. You know, with Scott. So, you know, they have a winning mentality. They enjoy being coached. They want to be coached. You know, even though the programming that they came from is much different than the way we do things here, they're very open to learning from us and basically saying like, "Hey, you know, my fitness is in your hands. Just show us the way." And they're really, really excellent athletes. So I'm excited to have Fee down here.
When it comes to Spencer signing on with Brute Strength, when did those conversations start? Because I think it's interesting because his twin brother, Saxon, right before the start of the season, signed on with Proven. We talked to him a few weeks ago, and then the Open started, and now Spencer is making huge changes.
Yeah. So I first started hearing it from Nick Fowler and Matt Bruce. You know, we've been working with Scott to try to figure out something that we can work together more in the future. And we ran a camp up at Scott's gym, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months ago, and it went very well. Now, Spencer wasn't there at the time, but I think that's when the partnership started to develop. And when Big Brother, and this is what I'm assuming, when Scott can be in there and see how we do things, see our methodology, see the way we coach, see who we are as a company, you know, I think it speaks volumes, you know, because honestly, like we're just a good group of coaches that really try, you know, our absolute best to be as inclusive as possible of anyone, whether you're a coach or whether you're an athlete. We've interviewed different coaches from different programs. We have relationships with a bunch of coaches spread out all over the world, you know, so I think that's when it really started to develop. And then, you know, honestly, from what I hear, like thanks to Scott, right? Because Spencer is an excellent athlete. And I know Scott is, you know, being his big brother, I know he was a big reason why he's over here with us now.
Speaking of big brothers, is that what Phil has kind of taken the role of in terms of those two 20-year-old guys and a 17-year-old girl around there? I mean, like I said, he's new and he's rather inexperienced, but he's probably one of the more talented, one of the talented ones at that bad. I mean, what role does each one specifically fill? Do they fill certain roles? No pun intended.
Yeah, you know, not really. I think Phil has been super helpful with Emma actually. You know, Emma's a sponge. You know, where she can get an edge, she's gonna try her best. So, you know, from Emma coming from her back injury off of Dubai, Phil being, you know, 24 now, you know, he's had a couple back issues from back in the day in his powerlifting day.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been there to kind of be like, hey, like this is what it looks like here, like this is what it looks like there. You know, just don't worry, don't try to speed this thing up. You know, so he's naturally filled that role. Now, when it comes to the boys, it's more of a friendly atmosphere than it is like Big Brother, to be honest with you. You know, Phil not being in the competitive realm of CrossFit for too long, You know, I definitely think that we hit a gold mine with him with finding him. But you know, he's been honestly, it's just like a wolf pack. It's just like this, like three natural friends, and they all are extremely different personalities, like extremely different. But I think that's what really like bonds them together is, you know, they understand they're from, you know, all different types, from all over the United States. And I think it's good to have that type of experience. It's like James is like, I've never seen James sad, not for a second. You know, happy go lucky all the time, just wants to make everyone smile, is always clowning around, joking around. And then when it's time to put his head down, you know, he's phenomenal on when it comes to competing and training. And then obviously like Dallin is just like, you know, just like a cold-blooded killer. You know, you walk up in there and it's like he means business, you know, and it's he has his own stoic way to go about doing things. And then you got Phil, like Phil is just 100% tech mode all the time. You know, he's like Phil is like the Black Mamba style where, you know, there's one thing about him is he's really not afraid of anything. You know, if we have a game plan, he's not doubting it, he's not questioning it, he's doing it 100%. And you know, I really do think that type of mentality is really going to take him a long way in the sport.
Is Emma back to 100% since Dubai? Where's she at with her recovery?
Yeah. You know, it's hard to tell. Our goal right now is to get through quarterfinals, and feel like we're back at like 80%, 90%. You know, with what we did inside of the Open, it's not a big priority. And so I set a governor on Emma through the Open. I don't know if she's probably not going to tell anyone that we did this, but you know, we knew that the Open is nothing that is our concern, right? Emma did the whole Open at like 80%. And so we held off on things that we knew probably wouldn't be the smartest things to do for her. And our goal is now is to get through quarterfinals. And then we have this large gap from quarterfinals into semifinals. And so the goal is still intact. And the goal for her is to make it back to CrossFit Games. And that's something that right there is something that we talk about a lot with our athletes is, you know, when they're feeling down, it's always a reminder that the goal is still intact. You know, it's not until we have to face it at that moment that it's like, okay, here's the next vision, the next thing that's going to be in our sight. So, you know, for her, that's where we're at with her. The goal is still CrossFit Games for 2022. Right now, we have nothing, you know, stopping us right now. You know, I think it's amazing to have her down here and have her in my watchful eye. You'd be amazed to see what some of these teenagers are capable of when they're left by themselves. And oftentimes we don't know until after the fact. So, you know, for any of the teenagers out there listening, it's being a teenager, you're very lucky because you're very pliable. You know, you can bounce back fairly quickly, but you know, it's not like that all the time. Ask any athlete, you know, that goes into their 20s, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, I have to be very smart from here. So you know, we're lucky to have her here. She's working with my sister on the rehab side and the prehab side. But you know, we're out here and you know, we still got this thing inside of our sights for making it back to Madison.
And Matt, my last question for you is with this training camp, having so many more in-person athletes, how do you think this will impact all of their journey to hopefully qualify for the games this year? And are there any more athletes that you have your sights on to get training in person with you guys?
So what I really like is the ability to create change instantly. So I it's unfortunate, but as much as I think my programming is really good, it is far from perfect. You know, so when I'm writing down a workout or a training piece, I see this vision, I have this like this intention and this plan in place, and oftentimes it can be, you know, interpreted in one way or another. Where if I want an athlete to be aerobic for, you know, a training piece, and they start to dip into an anaerobic state, I have to step in and make that change. Luckily, I can make it pretty quickly now, right? So whether that's going to be adjusting reps or adjusting rest, typically it's going to be on rest. Uh, that's a change that we're able to make quickly, and we're starting to see just within these last 2 months, how quickly these athletes are adapting. You know, and for some athletes, their priority is to build strength, and we're able to give them a cue right on the spot. And then for me as a programmer, I can make the changes week to week to make sure that we're focusing on that specifically. Now, that is the best part about having a training camp. Here at Brute, we are not concerned about these athletes competing day in and day out. It's an area that we have to be very strategic with. You know, because even though these athletes, they seem like they've got their head on straight, and I'm not talking about my athletes, but every athlete in general, to be constantly competing and feeling like, did I win? Did I lose? I don't think it's the smartest way to go about doing things, even though it is important. It has its place, within, you know, month to month or each quarter of training. It's not something that we're super focused on here, you know. And so thinking about, you know, what athlete in the future is going to be coming into Brute, you know, we have our eyes set on some athletes. You know, I don't foresee myself taking on any more athletes going into the CrossFit Games this year. We have athletes that are going to be coming down here during, I believe, quarterfinals or even leading up to semifinals. Some young ones that are going to be swinging on through that I'm excited for. Again, I'm not taking on any athletes. We do have other coaches here. Coach Dom is down here, and then Coach DC is going to end up down here as well. You know, so I would love for them to take on some of these younger athletes and potentially, you know, do basically follow in the footsteps that I did with, you know, when we had Dallin, James, and Emma, and some of these other younger teams that I had. But as far as what athletes we have in our sites right now, I truly have none. I would love it if, you know, to see Spencer down here. I would love to see David Bradley, one of our young guns of Brute, come through here and come train with these boys. So, you know, whatever ends up happening, it's always an exciting part when we get through the CrossFit Games, when we get through semifinals, because there's a lot of talk that begins to happen. You know, whether it's good or, you know, in some cases not so good, if athletes end up leaving. But, you know, right now the big focus is just on the athletes that we have here. And if, you know, if we get an athlete that wants to come on by, you know, would love to have him down here to come train with us.
So basically, Lauren, what he's saying is he's not looking at either one of us to come down there to train. We're not on his scouting report.
We're not invited to come train. Come on, Matt.
You should make the quarterfinals.
All right. Well, you know, Lauren, I know that you come down here because your brother works at my gym as well. So, you know, we're hopeful that the Brute Gym is going to be up and running here in April, because right now we're at Redline right now. But I mean, you know where CrossFit Naples is, and Redline's literally right across the street from us. So next time you're down here, it'll be much I guess much more impactful for you to see all of it happen in person.
Oh, good. And based on my brother's open scores, it doesn't look like he's flown under your wing too well.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a really good golf pro from what I hear. So I'm sure he'd say something similar to my golf swing.
I love it. I love it. Well, Matt Torres, thank you so much for sitting down with us. You have an incredible training crew down there in Naples, Florida, and myself and Patrick, we can't wait to see what success they have this season.
Thank you for having me, guys.